her last pictures, because this would be right before she got murdered.
You could say Roland Hedgepeth's home is a museum dedicated to Faith, a name that fills his walls, his shelves, his thoughts, even his voicemail recordings.
And I love you a lot, and I guess I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Faith was the light of my life. She was born at a really tough time during my life, and I have always thought that she was just a gift from God to give me a reason to live.
Faith Hedgpeth, much loved by her family and her Native American Haliwa Saponi tribe in North Carolina.
She was a very lively person, just friendly to everyone. Just want to give to people, give back to her community. She loved people.
At 19 years old, Faith was aiming to be the first in her family to graduate college, living in an off-campus apartment near the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. She dreamed of becoming a doctor. Then, someone took her life.
It's been very hard, learning of how Faith died. She was beaten. She was bludgeoned to death.
I don't know how I even functioned after I got the news. All I remember was crying uncontrollably for a long time.
For Faith, it began as a typical busy day of classes on the UNC campus. She hit the library with her friend and roommate Karina Rosario, and then was off to the local hangout just after midnight, a club called The Thrill, where they met some guys. According to Faith's friend Karina, the two arrived back at their apartment at about 2:30 a.m. Faith fell asleep, but Karina was later picked up by a friend and left the apartment. But when Karina returns the next morning around 11 a.m., the place has been transformed into a bloodbath.
Durham 911, where is your emergency?
I just walked into my apartment and my friend just like, he's unconscious. He's unconscious. I just walked in the apartment and there looks like there's blood everywhere.
Okay, listen to when you touched her, how did she feel? Does she feel warm?
No, she feels cold.
She feels cold? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Don't touch anything else, okay?
Detectives arrive and find Faith naked from the waist down with a black T-shirt pulled over her head. They begin the painstaking task of securing the crime scene and the painful calls to her divorced parents.
I dropped the phone. I put my head down and I cried. And I said, no, not my baby.
Connie told me that I needed to come to Chapel Hill, that the police had found Faith dead. This shouldn't have happened to her. I broke down after that. That was a tough day.
But even more painful would be the weeks that turned into months and finally years with no real suspects or arrests.
If anyone was in the area and saw something that they thought, no matter how insignificant, might have a connection, they would hope that they would come forward.
I believe she knew her killer.
Police reports reveal Faith may have been sexually assaulted. One of the many people detectives questioned early on was Eric DeCoy Jones, an aspiring rap artist and a former boyfriend of Faith's roommate, Karina Rosario. According to police reports, the relationship between Eric and Karina was troubled.
Faith took Karina to take out a restraining order. I think that very possibly DeCoy may have had some ill feelings toward Faith for doing that.
But Eric willingly cooperates with police. His apartment and car are searched for evidence, but Eric comes up clean on all accounts, and his DNA doesn't match any found at the scene. Police then test the DNA of many other young men. Some of them were at the nightclub where Faith and Karina had partied. None was a match.
I've been told that some of the sports teams were tested. I've been told that every male in the apartment complex was tested.
Complying with a Freedom of Information request, police finally released a trove of documents, many of them redacted with names blacked out. Most disturbing to the family is not what they find in the new information, but what is missing.
It was about 2 years before we got the autopsy results. And I'm not quite sure why they won't exactly say she was raped.
Police documents showed another possible clue.
2 years went by before we knew anything at all about the note that was left on the bed. The note said, I'm not stupid, bitch, jealous.
Roland says a cryptic note in childlike handwriting was left sitting by Faith's lifeless body. We asked a handwriting expert to give it a good look.
What struck me was how clean the document is. The crime scene was pretty bloody, and there's nothing on this document. Looking at it, I would get the impression it was either written outside of the crime scene or it was written before, like a premeditation.
Handwriting analysis can't determine gender or age, but it could answer some important questions about who wrote the note.
When I look at block letters, the writer distances themselves from authority, is all about themselves. It's me, 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 even at the cost of someone else.
And the true emotional state of the writer can be found back at the beginning of the note.
The word and sentence phrase, I'm not stupid, is a hot push-button factor. That's probably the most important thing said. This was a jealous person who was called stupid. The person that said it, who is now deceased, has no way of repeating this person is stupid, which is another way to shut them up.
Did someone have a vendetta against Faith Hedgepeth?
She still lives in my heart and in my mind all the time.
Faith Hedgepeth's father wondered if he'd live to see the day police would arrest someone for his daughter's vicious death. It would take 9 years, but finally, the case blew wide open.
Sometimes justice is swift, other times it takes longer.
A lot longer. For almost a decade, police couldn't tie any evidence to the original persons of interest, including Faith's roommate, Karina Rosario, or her ex-boyfriend, Eric Decoy Jones.
Today, after 9 years and a week, an arrest has been made in the murder of Faith Hedgpeth.
Cops arrest a man whose name had never been dropped in their case files, Miguel Enrique Salguero Olivares.
When I cried, it was tears of joy, tears of relief, knowing that someone had been arrested in the case.
That's right. A man who was 19 years old at the time is now under indictment for first-degree murder.
The Chapel Hill Police Department has never given up on this case. They've never even considered it a cold case.
How did investigators finally nab Salguero Olivares? Through pure chance and DNA. Crime reporter and podcaster Kelly McClear explains.
Miguel Salguero Olivares was stopped and suspected of drunken driving around August of 2021, and his DNA was taken at that time. That DNA matched the DNA found at the Hedgepeth crime scene.
In fact, according to police, all over the crime scene.
It was found on an empty rum bottle, which was determined to be the murder weapon. It was also found on the fast food paper bag with that cryptic message.
Turns out, Faith's apartment was not that far from where Salguero Olivares lived. Reportedly, he worked as a painter in the area and may have attended a party at Faith's apartment complex before she died.
I was prime suspect number one.
And remember Eric Jones? Well, he's glad to no longer be living under a cloud of suspicion.
I feel like I can breathe again.
As for Salguero Olivares,
there's not been much released so far about Salguero Olivares, as the Chapel Hill Police Department and the prosecutor's office are still keeping very much close to the vest.
While police are tight-lipped on a possible motive, McClear has some ideas.
He might have maybe asked her out, and she was like, no, I got a boyfriend. Maybe he saw her out with another guy.
Now only a trial will reveal if Olivares is directly tied to the cryptic note found near the body and the allegations of sexual assault. He remains in custody after a string of court delays, possibly due to over 39,000 pages of evidence and interviews in the case.
While the prosecution is not seeking the death penalty, both sides have said that they are ready to go to trial once the discovery phase is finalized. And sources have told me that they are expecting to go to court later this year or in early 2026. And it's a trial that cannot come soon enough for Faith's family.
Memories of Faith will never leave the Hedgepeth family. Roland actually goes back to the apartment directly below Faith's and stands in the bedroom underneath where his beautiful daughter's body was found, desperately trying to keep some connection.
That's where her lifeblood was spilled, okay? Her last breath was breathed. I tell her I'm sorry I wasn't there for her.